Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is with a great pleasure and a warm heart that I extend a hearty welcome to the fifth session of the Faculty Development Program organized by the Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, in collaboration with Emerald Publishing. Your presence today is a testament to our shared commitment to academic excellence and professional growth. First and foremost, I extend my warm welcome to Professor Athura Jnanapala, Dean, Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. Next, I bid a warm welcome to our esteemed resource person of today's session, Ms. Sangeeta Menon, Regional Publishing Manager, Emerald Publishing. With gratitude, let me welcome Professor M.S.M. Aslam, Chairman of the Research and Publication Unit, Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. With a great respect, let me also welcome Professor Jayanthen Devasiri, the chairperson of this faculty development program, Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. With gratitude, I would like to warmly welcome Ms. Disha Laknapal, the Chief Organizer of the Faculty Development Program, Emerald Publishing. Further, let me welcome Ms. Shanika Ratnasiri, Secretary of the Faculty Development Program, and Ms. Kaushallani Roandika, the Coordinating Secretary of the Faculty Development Program. In addition, I would also like to extend a warm welcome to all the distinguished participants from Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka and Emerald Publishing. Your presence here reflects your commitment to the pursuit of knowledge and continuous learning. Once again, a warm welcome to you all. Let's embark on this journey of knowledge and exploration together, fostering collaboration that will ripple across borders and disciplines, contributing to a brighter future for academia and beyond. Thank you. So before proceeding to today's session, theme how to improve article acceptance rate and publish quicker, guidance from a publisher, let me introduce our esteemed resource person of session 5, Ms. Sangeeta Menon, to the valued audience. Ms. Sangeeta Menon is Regional Publishing Manager at Emerald Publishing, where she leads the publishing program for India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, and Bhutan. And prior to joining Emerald, she worked with leading publishers like Taylor and Francis as editor, Journal South Asia, Elsevier as publisher, South Asia, and Wiley as publishing manager, India. With nearly 2 decades of experience in the publishing industry, she has seen firsthand the challenges that researchers in South Asia often face when it comes to communicating their research to the wider world. As a result, besides leading publication activities in the region, she oversees. Sangeeta is passionate about supporting researchers with sessions on research trends and understanding the publishing process better to help them make the right decision when it's come to publishing their work. This has enabled many researchers to benefit from the advantages of having their work included in respected journals and publications, which in turn allows their research to reach a wider audience. Dear ma'am, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Dimantu. Hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Thank you so much. Just put a slideshow. So, welcome everyone. I'm Sangeeta Menon. I'm the Regional Publishing Manager for Emerald. As mentioned during my introduction, that I have over 2 decades of working in the publishing industry. And this session is to kind of close the gap between writing a research and publishing, because they're 2 separate things. This session will not answer all your questions. I'm being very honest. It's a very vast topic, but hopefully it will address a lot of your basic questions. There is also an option of putting your queries in the chat, which we shall address at the end of the session. And we'll try to take as many questions as we can. I might go a little fast because I think there's a lot of content to be discussed here. So I'll go a little fast over the content, and any queries that we are not able to take up today, you can always contact me directly. I will share my details at the end of the presentation, and I'll be happy to help. So going forward, just to give you a little background about Emerald itself. We were founded in 1967 in Bradford, Westshire. Our core subjects are business, management, education, engineering, information science. We have over 300 plus journals, 3,300 ebook titles, over 2,500 plus teaching cases. We are known for supporting early career researchers, especially in platforms like this. And we offer support to all authors throughout each stage of the publication process. I shall be shedding some light on that process as well. We are the academic and publishing professional publisher of the year at in 2018 and 2020 IPG Independent Publishing Awards. So here we are going to discuss about how to improve article acceptance rate and publish quicker. So the session aims to also familiarize you with the processes that happen behind the scenes, to understand what are the challenges we as publishers face or what the editors face and how the decision making takes place. Because to be honest, the system isn't perfect. You know, there are some flaws, there's some gaps which we are constantly trying to cover. It is also to help all researchers understand where their owners, where their rights are within these processes, how they could be taking certain steps that could be delaying the acceptance. So how do we close those gaps? We also need to understand that as publishers, content has never been an issue for us. It's the kind of content that we need to include or what we publish. That's where the challenge for us lies. And researchers, of course, we understand, that there is research to be published, but how do you make sure that you get accepted in the first place? That becomes a challenge for the researchers. So this session should ideally help you close that gap. And this is also, while I'll be using a lot of Emerald as reference in this, but the session does not talk only about Emerald's way of processing papers or publishing processes. This is applicable to all your major publishing houses, your big fours. We'll use very similar processes. So this should be helpful to understand, on a wider scale. So like it mentions here, writing, sorry, one second. Writing is an art, but publishing is a business. So let's start with that, because when it comes to doing research or writing research paper, that's a very different set of skill set required. And when you're doing your PhDs, is what you're learning is how to create content or do research which is validated, which is substantiated by past literature. But when it comes to publishing, a lot of good literature, very good articles get rejected because of certain choices that the researchers or the editors may be making. And what we, as publishers, our biggest worry is losing great research due to the way the processes are established, right? So one thing you need to remember is, sorry, one second. So what you need to remember is when it comes to researchers and publishing, approximately 225,000 researchers are joining the research community each year. So your competition is not limited to the people around you, but goes far beyond. And these are researchers coming from various kinds of institutes. They could have better resources, better guidance, better training in publishing or expressing the research basically. So you're competing with them with a limited number of journals or platforms where you have to publish, where the acceptance rate may be low and rejection rates may be high, and everyone wants to get it. So how do you make those choices? That's what we are going to be discussing. Another thing is that nearly 45% of the articles are returned to authors without even reaching the editor-in-chief. Now, these are not the rejections that we often are familiar with. These are, this is when uh, researchers send the papers with incomplete information or have not followed the guidelines of the journal very accurately. For instance, the journal requires 5 keywords, but the author has included 10. So we are not the ones who will, deduct or remove keywords. We'll ask the authors to do that. Or, it could be simple thing like it's not very clear who the corresponding author is. You need the email ID of only the corresponding authors, and you know, the article actually has the email addresses of all the authors, all the co-authors. So now that becomes a challenge for the publishers, and which is why those papers are sent back. So these are not even reaching the editor-in-chief. This is happening as a step before that. So this process itself will take quite a few days. So like I said, the session says how to publish quicker. And so you want to make sure that the timeline at your end is kept as tight as possible. You don't make mistakes that are going to cost you days or weeks in fact when it comes to publishing. And not even just publishing, in fact, for the decision itself. Okay? So the next point is, out of the 55% of the articles that do reach the EIC, that's the editor-in-chief, between 30 and 50% of all research papers end up as desk reject. That means they're not even reaching the peer review stage. So the editor-in-chief is often has to make a decision on a lot of papers in a very short time. And there are so many other parts, of the process that they are responsible for, which means that many times even some very good papers get rejected at this stage itself. It's not even going into the peer review stage. So I say that the challenge for the first challenge that you have to cross is to reach the peer review stage. It's not just direct publishing. So you want to make choices that will help the EIC look closer at your paper and say, okay, let me send it to the peer review and see what they also feel about the paper. And this is to do with the communication of the research itself. We will be covering those aspects in this presentation. And finally, over 60% of the articles published by high impact journals do not contribute to their impact. Now, why this point has been included is to help you understand that when you're putting in so much of effort into your research, into your article or your case study, whatever you're trying to publish, uh, the kind of choices you make in terms of which journals you're going to publish in, where you're submitting, may has an implication, for you in the future. So when it comes to high impact journals, for instance, these are usually recommended to those who already have a very strong publishing background. They have, they have the opportunity or the leisure to actually wait for the decision by high impact journals, which actually take a lot of time to decide. Secondly, the citations is not necessarily the highlight here. So the articles may not even be getting cited as much, but it still brings a lot of reputation to the researcher when they publish here. So when you're an early career researcher, when you're trying to get your papers accepted or publish as many papers as you can, your focus would be on very high quality journals, which may not necessarily be journals with impact factor. So making a decision on where to publish becomes very crucial. So how long does the publishing process itself take? Now, this is the general timeline that all your major publishers follow. This is where we try and reduce the time as much as possible. So, about 15, 20 years ago, when I started my journey, it was a very different scenario. The editor-in-chief was God. They could take decisions and, not respond to emails if they couldn't. And researchers didn't have much choice but to wait to hear. And it could take months and, in certain cases, even a couple of years to get a rejection, So that's a kind of experience.
Hi, Sangeeta. We can't hear you. Can you hear me? Hi, Sangeeta, can you hear me? It seems that Sangeeta may be facing some connection issues. I can see her moving the. Maybe she will
Am I
try to
audible
join
now?
it. Yes, yes, you are audible now. You're back.
Okay,
You're back.
perfect. Sorry, this is, I think, one of the problems with internets today. Okay. So I think I was at the point about talking about inviting reviewers. So once your paper reaches the editor in chief, inviting reviewers takes about a week or two. Then it goes under review for 6 to 8 weeks. During this time, not only are the editors enabled with this, with the system to send reminders constantly to encourage the reviewers to come back with the feedback as quickly as possible. This is where we, as publishers, work closely with the editors to make sure that we are adhering to the timeline as closely as possible. Then once the reviewers' comments are in, the editor will take about 2 weeks to make an assessment. So what we are talking about is an ideal time from submission to review feedback is 3 to 4 months. And once the paper is accepted, it should be published within 3 months. So what we're talking about is from the time of submission and provide, considering that everything has gone smoothly, there may be minor revisions and the researcher has shared their paper back in time with the corrections and everything. Ideally, the paper should be published within 7 months, 6 to 7 months. But this is not always the case. There are a lot of challenges that we face that cause delays in this process. So why do people publish in the first place? So when we asked the motivation for publishing, 80% of our authors publish with the view of career progression and personal development. Of course, it's a mandate in most universities, so it is understandable. The second would be subject development, where 70% of the authors, they said they wanted to share the knowledge and experience. There was also 85% published for the esteem and to receive internal and external recognition. 50% published for company recognition and to promote their business, which is like white papers usually. So like I said, when you are very clear about the motivation of, what kind of outcome you're looking for from your paper, that's when you can decide on how, which journal is the right one for you. So when it comes to journals, you have to think about it as an investment decision. And a paper that you've worked so hard on should be working for you even post publication. So you have to make the right choice when it comes to the right journal for your right match for your article or your research. So factors that you want to consider are the kind of readership it has, the recent articles, how communicative it is, the societies associated with it, how international it is, what are the acceptance and rejection rate, what is the circulation of the journal, and the time from submission to publication. Also, you want to check what type of paper are you planning to write or publish and whether that journal does accept those kind of papers or not. So reading the aims and scope of a journal becomes extremely important. I think unfortunately a lot of rejections that happen or disrejects happen because it's not even a match with the journal in the first place. So you have to make sure that, like for instance, if you're publishing a paper on marketing and there are 200 journals on marketing, you can be sure that each of these journals are differentiating themselves, from the other through small changes in the kind of content that they accept. So make sure that you read the aims and scope very carefully to to make sure that your journal is a your article is a good match to the journal. Secondly, if you have an open access mandate, you can publish open access with any embryo journal. I will be talking more about open access to give you a quick glance into what's happening there. In terms of measuring quality, citations are often looked at as a means of judging the quality of research, but we are moving away from that. We are also, when you're talking about the quality of a journal, one thing that you must keep in mind is we are moving very quickly towards, uh, you know, assessing the quality of an article rather than the quality of the journal. So that's a change that's happening in the publishing. In the next few years, you will see more and more focus. So that transition has started happening already. So we're looking at article level matrix and not journal level matrix, because we understand it's a flawed system of judging quality of the papers published in those journals. So not every article published in an impact factor journal is, like I said, highly cited. It may not even be the best of papers. There's so many factors that determine how it gets there. So you have to keep in mind that there's a when you're judging the quality of the journal, there are various aspects that you need to look into and not limit yourself to just citations or just impact factors. So when it comes to selecting the right journal, some of the ways that you can make your journey a little easier is by using the journalguide.com. You have Journal Suggester or Finder very easily available. You have the reference list of your own paper to look into and decide which are the journals which you have used in your reference. They are likely to have the same kind of readership. So they become a very good source of identifying the right journals for you. This is, of course, a pre-internet era. That was the only way to go about it, but you have your other options now. And fourth is the publisher's website also, because now as publishers, we also want to make that journey easier for the researchers. So our advanced search systems are constantly being worked on to help researchers to be able to identify the right kind of journals. Again, for example, if you're trying to publish in a marketing journal, in that case, all these sites are not going to give you the right list or the definite list of where you should be publishing. So out of 200 journals, you might be able to reduce the list to say 20 or 30, but you will still have to go through the aims and scope and see and look into the publication history, look at the submissions and acceptance rate. So all these factors will have to be looked into at your end to identify the right journal. I always say before publishing, you should have the list of 5 journals ready with you. So the minute one journal rejects, and there's so many reasons for rejecting an article, which may have nothing to do with the quality of research itself. Okay, so we will discuss that. But you please remember that if you get a rejection, your first step would be to immediately target the second journal on your list, and so on and so forth. So you need to be prepared for the next step very, very quickly. So what are the top reasons for rejection? The first one is not following the instructions, which is the author guidelines. Now, the most common question that comes to the mind of a lot of researchers is, why do we even have so many author guidelines, different for each journal? In fact, even with the same publisher, you'll see every journal seems to have a different author guideline. And why would we have to do this when we are coming in this time and age where everything can be done easily? We can have a standard guideline that is applicable to all journals. So let me give you a slight an insight into this. When it comes to submissions, the code of ethics says that you're supposed to submit to one journal at a time, wait for the decision, and only after rejection can you go and submit to another journal. Unfortunately, this is not a practice a lot of authors, follow. So they submit to multiple journals. So when a journal does not receives a submission where the author guidelines is not being followed, it's usually an indication that the paper has most probably been submitted to multiple journals, and which is why they will not take the chance of processing the paper further.
Hi, Sangeeta. We seem to have lost you again. We apologize. I think Miss Miss Menon is facing some issues. I'm her colleague. I'm from Delhi, so that's why I'm here. I'm still connected. Please do not worry. I'm sure she's going to change her server and come back. She is going to join back again. We apologize. Please do wait for her to be online again. She is trying to join back in. We apologize for the delay. She's back. She's back with us now. Welcome back, Sangeeta. We can see your screen. Everything starting. We can't hear you, but we can definitely see that you're trying to move your screen. So I think your connection is coming back. Yeah.
Okay.
Please continue. Yeah, you're back. We can hear you. You can continue.
Okay. I have now connected with my mobile. Thank you. I have now connected with mobile. Hopefully, no more accidental disconnection happening going forward. So the final point I was saying is on insufficient contribution to the field. So we are at a time where, like I said in the beginning of my presentation, that it's not the quantity or the content that has been a challenge for publishers. It's always been the quality. What content can be improved? What can be published? And here we are talking now about impact of publication. So impact is how much of your research is actually can be translated into real life, into real world. That is a factor that is becoming a very strong determinant of whether the paper can move forward or not, or can it be published or not. So what is it contributing to the field? How is it adding to that existing knowledge? So now this has always been a focus with editors, but even more so now. So when it comes to submissions, you'll start seeing a lot of publishers will have when during the submission you're supposed to have an impact statement. So you're supposed to provide an explanation of why your research is important in your field, or what are you contributing, what is your paper contributing to the field. So that's an impact statement which is becoming going to become very crucial, a part of the step when it comes to publishing articles. So what makes a good paper according to editors and reviewers? The first one is originality. What is so new about the subject, treatment, or the results that they should be really looking for? So originality is a huge aspect. The second is relevance to an extension of existing knowledge. The third is your research methodology. Are the conclusions valid and objective? Then there's clarity, structure, and quality of writing. This is not the same as grammatical errors. That's not what we are talking about here. We are talking about how well it communicates. Does it really express very well what the paper is all about? And when I discuss about how to structure your paper, I will be covering this in terms of adding clarities and structure to the to your research. When it comes to the scholar researchers from Asia, our biggest challenge is not poor research. Our biggest challenge is not communicating it effectively. So we will discuss this point in a little more detail this soon after. Then is the sound and logical progression of argument, how well it reads. Because when we are writing research, we sometimes are very biased in because it makes a lot of sense to us. But we have to look at from the perspective of a reader who's getting introduced to your topic for the very first time. So it doesn't matter if they have 30, 40 years of experience in that particular field, they are reading your research for the very first time. So it has to have sound and logical progression of the argument. Then is the theoretical and practical implications, or what is called the so what factors. Like you have done the research, but then so what? What's what's so great about the research that we should be taking notice of it? Then is the recency and relevance of references. So editors typically take about 15 to 20 minutes to decide whether the paper should move into peer review or not. That's the unfortunate fact about the process. Now, this is also important because if the editor was making all the decisions, we don't need peer reviewers. But the fact is, you are as a as the author of your research, you are the subject, you are the research expert. So the editor is looking at certain factors to decide whether he or she should invite reviewers to also go through it in greater detail and find, share their opinion about the submitted. So one of the factors that the editors will be looking at is the recency and relevance of references. Now, of course, it means that they are looking whether there's if you have too many old references, it could mean that your research could be outdated. So now this is red flag and does not, I repeat, does not mean that your paper is going to get rejected. It all depends a lot on the topic. So they are still going to have a look at the recency and relevance of references to make sure that they say that, okay, this makes sense that this article will have something, reference that is from 2014 or from 2000 based on the topic. So it may be a red flag but not the only reason for rejection. Then is the internationality of the topic and the global focus, uh, adherence to the editorial scope and objectives of the journal, a good title, keywords, and well-written abstract. So these are certain, like your title, your keywords, your abstract, and your references become very important in this 15-20 minutes that the editor spends in deciding whether the paper should go forward or not. So here we come to discussing the structure, how to structure your paper better. So when it comes to structuring your paper, we always say start from the figures, tables, and theory, or your data and proposition. Then move on to preparing your method, results, and discussion section. And from there, move to conclusion and introduction. And your final part should be about preparing your title and abstract. So when you're structuring your paper, when you're preparing your introduction, please open any of your favorite papers, the highly cited papers, the well-known papers, and look at how they have handled the introduction. So ideally, they'll be addressing a few of these questions listed on the screen. What is the problem? Are there any existing solutions? Which one is the best? What is the main limitation? And what do you hope to achieve? So a very good introduction will ideally have a few of these questions addressed in that section itself. What you want to consider is, do you want to use a quote from some previous research? If you're adding something new to the research, you can probably mention it here. Use only recent work to cite. Self-citing should be limited to only when relevant. Any work that is not yours must be referenced. And even if you're using your own previously published work, it must be referenced. When it comes to preparing your methods, indicate the main methods that we use. Demonstrate that the methodology was robust and appropriate to the objectives. There are so many papers where it's not very clear to the readers on why those choices were made, why the author has rejected certain processes and or certain methods and chosen the one which they have used for their research. So it's necessary to add that clarity. If you think that is there's a lot of information that you need to give about which methodology was, why it was not appropriate for your research, save that for your appendix section and stick to only the basics or keep it neat and clean when it comes to expressing the methodology of your research. So you focus on the main story and talk about the main stages of your research in this section. And like it already says that any additional details you think that will be helpful for your readers always should be in the appendices of the paper. When it comes to result, only focus on the essentials of your result. What are the main facts? And only those things that have more wider significance. You don't have to give great detail of every statistics of your results in this section. So basically what you're asking is, what are the really significant facts that are emerging from my paper, from my research? That is what should come in your result section. When it comes to discussion, what you want to consider is providing perhaps interpretation of your results presented. If your results are consistent with what the other investigators have reported, uh, if they're not, then why that could be the case. If there's any limitation, you might want to include here. Uh, and what you want to see is also, does your discussion lead to an easy flow into the conclusion section? Do not make any statements that go beyond what the results can support, and no matter how tempting that is. And do not suddenly introduce any new terms or ideas at this point of time. And when it comes to conclusion, I think the most common error a lot of early career researchers do is they create a summary of the paper in this section. So please do not do that. So what you're looking here is, you want to present global and specific conclusions here. You want to indicate what are the uses and extensions of your research. The questions that we had posed in the introduction section, you can look at answering the original question, state any limitations that you may have, and state implications for further research. Like I mentioned, please do not summarize the paper, because abstract is the section for that. Do not start a new topic or introduce any new material. Do not make any obvious statements, and do not contradict yourself. So you have to receive, uh, you have to read through your research from the perspective of the reader, and see whether there's a logical flow for your paper that you're submitting. So when it comes to polishing your work, now I had mentioned that there's a difference between polishing your work and communicating your research. So of course, when what we want is, besides making sure that your research is expressed well, which is the section that we discussed earlier, you must polish up your work. Any incorrect grammar, spelling, or punctuations, any flow and transition or sense problem, any typographical errors. You make sure that the mathematical or statistical content is accurate. Your references should be complete and accurate. Make sure you are consistent over your manuscript in terms of your abbreviations that you may be using, or the terms that you're using. It has to be consistent. If you know what your common mistakes are, or where you struggle, please try to cover those. Use, but do not rely on the spell checker, and show the draft to someone else also, so you have a fresh pair of eyes that can actually identify gaps. Now, why this becomes important is because, when, like I said, it's about communicating your research rather than only looking at the errors. If an author has not bothered doing these basics, there are very good chances that the research does not read well, and there could be confusion for the editor or the reviewers in terms of what the author is trying to express. This is why it becomes very important for you to cover this aspect before submission. If you think this is going to be a challenging thing for you, there are a lot of editing services available, uh, especially in India. I'll say that is one option. However, I would recommend going through the editing service of the publisher in such cases, because your research will be safe even before the submission has happened. So you might want to look into the options of having these errors cleared before you submit your paper. So when it comes to publication in this time and age, uh, publishers are, of course, we are always constantly trying to make sure that whatever we publish gets discovered. So researchers sitting in any part of the world, when they type certain keywords or whether they're looking for a paper, the research that we have published, that should come forward. That's how we get better citation. That's how we get lots of downloads. And that's something that all researchers themselves would want. That's how your research becomes visible to others. So when it comes to discoverability of an article, there are three segments of your paper that have the potential to actually impact your chances of getting published, read, and cited. And those sections are your keyword, title, and abstract. Which is why I had kept these three aspects separate from the rest of the sections that I discussed under structuring your article. So when we are talking about the title, one of the tips that I can give you is whenever you start, I used an example of a medical article here, you must ask yourself the questions, like we have four questions here. What is my paper about? What techniques and designs are being used? Who or what is being studied, and what were the results? So based on that, the author has created an answer that, my paper studies whether X therapy improves the cognitive function of patients suffering from dementia. What techniques and designs were used? It was a randomized trial. What is being studied? I studied 40 cases from 6 cities in Japan. And what were the results? There was an improvement in the cognitive function of the patients. So you can use your answer to now list the keywords. That's your X therapy, randomized trial, dementia, 6 Japanese cities, 40 cases, improved cognitive function. So you have identified what your keywords are, which will actually cover everything what your article is about. Now that you have these words, now you can build a sentence. So the first sentence that the author has done here is this study is a randomized trial that investigates whether X therapy improved the cognitive function in 40 dementia patients from 6 cities in Japan. It reports improved cognitive function. Now, this is 28 words. Though it explains in an excellent manner what the paper is all about, the title is too long. So, we are ideally looking for 11 to 12 word long titles. Okay, so what you want to do is delete any word which is excessive or repetitive and try to link the remaining. So the author has tried to do that repeatedly. So you can see in the second attempt, the author was able to reduce it to 23 words. Then further, filter it down. It comes down to 18 words. And then finally, the author has deleted every non-essential information and reworded with the subtitle and a focus on the results of the paper. So it says X therapy improves cognitive function in 40 dementia patients, a randomized trial. Now this is perfect because it's 12 words and gives an exact idea of what the paper is about, and also equally importantly, it uses the keywords of the paper. So when it comes to keywords, it becomes very, very essential because your search engine and indexing and abstracting services actually classify papers using the keywords. That's why it becomes very important to have the right keywords. You can't just give a long list of keywords and hope something works. When journals have a limitation of saying, uh, you have to give 5 keywords or you have to give only 10. So you have to make sure that the ones which you identify are aligned. Now, if you go to a lot of your emerald journals and you submit your article, you might get a pre-prepared list of keywords based on the kind of topics that the journal accepts. Now, in this case, now suppose your keyword is not there, you can definitely contact the editor and let them know your set of keywords that you wish to include, which you think will be a better match. So you can definitely do that by using a preset list of keywords. It is just to make it easier for researchers, but it may not be the right fit for you, and you can definitely help us expand the list of keywords by sharing yours. So what you want to make sure is when you have identified the keywords, are those the words which are terms and phrases that have been used repeatedly in the text? Are there any variants of the term and phrase that you wish to include? Or if there's any common abbreviation of the terms you want to make sure which one of the two you want to use. And one of the easiest ways to check whether your keywords are effective or not is to check what kind of results are coming up when you type those keywords into, say, Google and say, what kind of papers are coming up. So that's one very quick and easy way at your end to check whether your relevant readers are going to reach your paper easily. So when it comes to abstract, Emerald uses a structured abstract. But nonetheless, even if you have to prepare an abstract which is not structured like Emerald does, you can always create a very concise and effective abstract using this method. So what you, like I already mentioned during when we talked about structuring an article, you're preparing your title and abstract at the very end, and this is why. So when you begin the abstract after you have finished writing your paper, you will need to ask what problems are you trying to solve and what motivated you to do so. Now, your answer should be from the introduction and the conclusion that you've already written. The second is, how do you go about achieving your objective? Your method section and your results section would give you the answers here. And what are the implications of your findings? Now you have to arrange the sentences and phrases in a single paragraph using the same sequence that is of an article, which is introduction, methods, results, and conclusion. And keep in mind that generally journals have different word count for abstract. So you want to make sure that when you are preparing your abstract in a paragraph form, it adheres to what the journal specifies. And since we are talking about a research that has already taken place, when you're writing an abstract, make sure you are using the past tense. Then is one of the most, I think, abhorred and detested processes, of publishing, which is peer review. Something that not many people look forward to, but becomes very, very essential part of the process. So when it comes to peer review, we did a quick check on in terms of what is people's reaction, what is the author's reaction when asked to review their paper. So what we found is when we had like submissions with each decision or editor's decision, wherever we had given the request for revision, about 10% of the author's papers were actually withdrawn. So with each request for revision, papers kept getting withdrawn. And it gives an idea that usually, authors feel there's no point. I'm just going to be working on this paper, keep revising, and it's going to get rejected. I'd rather try somewhere else. Now, one thing you need to remember is, first of all, there are hardly any papers that go without at least one revision. That's a minimum that any paper will put. Secondly, when it comes to revision, the request for revision, you should be happy because no publisher or editor or peer reviewer would want to invest more time into a paper which has no merit. So if there's a request for revision, it is good news. But there's also certain steps that you need to uh, take, take at your end to make sure that you get through the review process in the best way possible, because there are, again, there's a lot of elements here where mistakes can happen. So one of the things that I had done a few years back is I spoke to a lot of editors of international journals, both Indian and non-Indian, non-Asian, and I asked them, what is their experience when it comes to research from Asia, and all of them had a very common complaint. They said Indian researchers, Asian researchers, never, you know, acknowledge what changes they've made based on the reviewers' comments. So it becomes very important to understand where your onus lies in this process, because if they have this complaint, I have also heard of quite a few cases where researchers have made all the changes that the reviewer has requested, and then the paper gets rejected. So there's a balance that you need to have. So first of all, you need to acknowledge the editor and set a revision deadline. When we talk about publishing quicker, how quickly the authors get back with their comments, with the correction, becomes a very important factor, because based on that, of course, the papers are also getting aligned for the next issue. So you don't want to cause any delay at your end. Secondly, this is where it becomes very, very important for researchers. There's a common misconception that if I don't agree with the reviewer, then it's very possible that my paper will get rejected, which is which is not true. Because the other side of it is, when you make changes according to the reviewer comments, even if you don't agree with it, when you start making all those changes, you lose the focus of your paper. You might digress, and then you might actually, create a paper which makes no sense or does not become relevant for the journal. So how do you find that balance? If you disagree with the reviewers, you need to have a very good reason and explanation of why you disagree. The first thing before you do that, or the thing that you do before writing the statement, is to check at your end that could it be that you have not expressed that point correctly, or requires a further explanation, because you clearly mentioned it there, or you feel that the reviewer may have made a suggestion based on how they're reading it, but you have a very different take. So if you disagree, you must take that stand and explain to the editor why you do not agree with the reviewer's comments. If you have any doubts regarding the comments, please clarify it right in the beginning, and consult with your colleagues or co-authors when you're responding. Meet the revision deadline, and please attach a covering letter which identifies point by point what corrections have been made, and if certain revision requests have not been met, then why not. So giving that explanation adds a lot of clarity to the editor also, to understand how the paper has been written, and gets a glimpse into your aspect of how you're writing or what you're trying to express. So it is very, very necessary go through this peer review with a clear idea and clear focus on what your research is all about. Peer reviewers are also people, they're first-time readers, and they might have their opinion. And while most peer reviewers come from the idea of giving fruitful, suggestions, they can still be incorrect in certain aspects. So do not be afraid to disagree with them. When it comes to publication ethics, I'll just go over the basics, because this is a very, very vast topic. But always make sure that all the authors have agreed to the paper. If there's any conflict of interest, you must express that. Please remember that authors and editors are equally supported by the Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE, which is what we refer to. So in case of any problems that the author faces in terms of, say, the paper is plagiarized, or the editor is not responding to their, any concerns regarding their paper, we have to go through the processes set by Committee on Publication Ethics. Similarly, editors also are protected by this. To give you an example, we had a few years back, when I was with a different publisher, an author reached out to me and said, my paper has been plagiarized, and that material has been published in one of your journals. I repeatedly wrote to the editor, and he is refusing to make any changes or retract the article, and I'm very upset about it. So we reached out to the editor based on the processes that we have. We reached out to the editor. We saw the communication. The editor also gave an explanation, which is the same he had given to the author. He shared that entire communication with us. This goes through our legal team, by the way. So the editor had given explanation of why he did not agree with the author in terms of plagiarism. And we also did not see any evidence of plagiarism. We still shared it with the legal team, with our subject experts. They also went through the entire communication that has happened. They went through the evidences, and then it is only then we agreed that the editor was correct, and we communicated that to the author. So, we have to follow these processes set by the Committee on Publication Ethics, but then it protects both the authors and editors equally. What you also want to keep in mind is you must not submit to more than one journal at a time, which is one of the points I had mentioned earlier. So a lot of authors, they actually try and they are in a rush to, um, you know, publish as quickly as possible, and they think submitting to multiple journals is one way to go about it, but it's absolutely not. You are taking away the opportunity of some other researcher. Please keep that in mind. Secondly, even papers that are any paper that is uh, processed through the publisher, whether it is accepted or rejected, it we incur costs. Okay, there's a lot of steps, processes, and systems involved in processing every single paper, irrespective of the outcome. So that's another aspect that, when we go almost towards the decision, and when an author writes saying that, I'm withdrawing my paper because it has been accepted by somebody else, or you're actually committing a kind of this is ethically incorrect. So this can lead to an action from the publisher. We could be informing your institute, informing other publishers. We also have cases, or we're seeing less of it, but even among competitors, we do have that kind of understanding and communication. So when we have the same author writing or submitting to the same journal, same article to different publishers, when we come to know about it, we are bound to take some kind of action to make sure that the message is very clear that it cannot be done. So there are authors who get blacklisted for such steps also. But again, we follow Committee of Publication Ethics in terms of what would be the action taken against um, such a researcher, and it could involve your institutes as well. The second is, please do not self-plagiarize. When it comes to plagiarism, a lot of researchers now understand the kind of tools that are involved for checking plagiarism, and so we don't see too many cases of plagiarism itself. What we see is what we say self-plagiarized material. We see a lot because the author has not cited their own work, or given reference to the own work very correctly, so accurately. So you want to make sure that you do not self-plagiarize, or to the point that it becomes a case of plagiarism itself. Then make sure that you have clear permissions to publish interviews and case studies. And please do not make changes to the author list after your paper is accepted. And why this is, like I said, in the do's, seek agreement between authors. This entire aspect of making changes to author list after acceptance is a big problem, because we have so many cases of authorships for sale. So once a paper is accepted, we are quite aware that there are groups of individuals who actually charge for adding additional researchers name for some kind of monetary gain. So we want to make sure that our processes are as ethical as possible. So when we receive changes in the author list after acceptance, the paper has to be put on hold. The Committee on Publication Ethics has to be contacted. It has to go through the legal team, and they will try to find out why this change happened at such a later stage. And we cannot reject the paper. We do not reject the paper when this happens, and that is because we also have to keep in mind that there could be some genuine reasons for the author list being altered at such a late stage. But again, like I said, this causes a significant delay in the publication of the paper or acceptance of the paper. There's definitely more information on the plagiarism and copyright that is available on any publisher's website. We use, we have it on, more general information about plagiarism is there on plagiarism.org. And you can definitely go through it in greater detail and come back to me in case of any queries. When it comes to copyright, you have to make sure that you get your permission to use the content that you have not created. And so you must have these documents ready. So supply a written confirmation from the copyright holder when you're submitting your manuscript. Many authors make the choice of, they say that copyright could take time. I don't want to cause a delay in my publication, and they submit their publication without the copyrights in place. So if the permission is not clear, we cannot republish with that specific content. Without the confirmation, we cannot even process the paper forward. So please do not cause delays for yourself by making those choices. So coming to open access, which is gaining, more and more importance day by day. Open access is constantly evolving. To be honest, in the past 20 years, I've seen so many changes happening, and there's some very exciting parts about the open access movement that I'm not sure how many of you are aware of, but I'm very happy to share. But before we get there, I can just share a little bit about open access at Emerald itself. So Emerald has now closed the Emerald Open Research, which is F1000 platform that we had through Taylor and Francis, which actually removes the need for it's an open peer review system, open submission, open peer review, and that gives a lot of ownership to the authors in terms of publishing. So research here does not go into a journal; it goes on the open research platform. And but what we have seen is that again the system is robust and everything, but perhaps this is something that our researchers are just not ready at this point of time. So that for the time being, the Emerald Open Research has been paused. We are no longer publishing this, but this is something which can come up later. But you have your F1000 platform still available. Other publishers are also using it. You can explore that. Other than that, we have open access books that we provide for all our book formats. You can do monographs, handbooks, short forms, and professional content as well as book chapters through open access. When it comes to open access journals, this is where I get a lot of queries regarding open access because the different models are not very clear to researchers in general. And there's a lot of mistrust regarding open access thanks to our predatory publishers who have actually spoiled the entire intent of what open access was supposed to do. So open access was to improve visibility of researchers and of the research and make it accessible, make the knowledge, free for all and easily accessible to all. But of course, because it's a movement that's evolving, and we can't just shift from subscription to open access because there's so many other challenges that we have to look at, not just in terms of finances, but also in terms of the quality, the processes, and mandates of different countries that need to be kept in mind. So when it comes to open access journals, there have been challenges. Like I said, there's some very good news for researchers, which I can explain when we talk about this. So first of all is your green open access route, which offers all the authors the option of making the research openly available or through the institution repository. Now, a lot of publishers have, an embargo period, say of 12 months to 24 months, where you can't share the paper. So your final accepted copy is of course getting published in the journal, but your preprint copy, preprint version is available through the institutional repository after 12 to 24 months. So only after that time period is over, you are allowed to share it freely. But because at Emerald we are supporting open access and we are supporting researchers, we do not have any embargo period, which means if you're choosing to publish through green open access, you can share that preprint version, your pre-accepted version of your paper freely right from the day you submitted into the repository. So we do not have any barriers there. Second is hybrid. So your hybrid open access is where authors are allowed to publish in a closed or a subscription journal, where subscription journal we all understand is if I were to access that journal online, and if my institute does not have access to it, does not have a subscription, I have an option of going to and purchasing the individual articles. So those are subscription journals. But when it is hybrid, which is I think almost all your subscription journals are now hybrid in some form, you will have an option of uh, you know making your article free uh, uh, only your article free for that particular issue. So for example, there are 10 articles being published in an issue and your article is one of them. If you have paid the article publishing charge of the journal, in that case your article will be freely accessible to all, while the other 9 articles are closed. That means a reader has easy access to your article, but will have to pay separately for the other articles. So this again brings a lot of visibility. When it comes to APCs, of course, different publishers have different costs, and but within Emerald, what we have done is we understand, like I said, the need to step away from the kind of mm, journal metrics or journal quality being decided. We also understand that when it comes to different article processing charges, different rates, the researchers are often compelled to choose based on how much the article processing charges are. So it may not be the best research practice, and it may not be the best thing for the researchers or the publishers or the editors. So our article processing charges are uniform throughout our portfolio, which means it doesn't matter whether the journal is 30 years old or 3 years old, it doesn't matter. We expect our researchers to focus on the engine scope of the journal and to see whether it's a good match for their research article or not. So then we have you know two fully open access, which is gold open access journals, which is International Journal of Climate Change Strategies and Management, and the second is mental illness. So any content accepted here, they have to pay an APC. Besides that, if you go to our website, we have now launched 4 new journals which are fully open access. They are gold open access, mind you, but for any submissions made before 24th of July, 31st of July 2024, they will be published free of cost if they are accepted. So you might want to check out Emerald website for those, and we will be coming out with more open access journals which are related to sustainability, UN SDG. They are aligned to the UN SDGs, and so for the time being, you have waiver on the APCs on those lists. And finally, it's my personal favorite. It's a model that I work on, and I think it's this is the need of the hour. We have platinum open access journals, which are also known as sponsored journals. So these journals are fully open access and they're sponsored by an institute, which means there is no author processing charges if accepted into these journals. So we have about 75 plus journals which are platinum open access, where you can publish without any article processing charges. The processing, the processes related to the editorial decisions and all are the same as the subscription journal. So there is no compromise in terms of the quality of the articles that are accepted here. So here is an example of our platinum open access journals. You can have a look at the list of partner journals and the link shared here. Within India and Sri Lanka, we have signed up 9, and there are a few more journals coming by the end of this year. So you may want to have a visit the site. I'm really sorry for that interruption. So like I mentioned, we have 9 journals which are from India and Sri Lanka among the list of 75 plus journals. These are, there are no APCs to these journals. These are all sponsored by the institute, and they all will follow very strict, rigorous processes when it comes to the papers that are being accepted. These journals, again, by supporting these journals, we are also ensuring that all these journals get into the right indexing agencies, whether it's Scopus or ABDC, so they we are working towards that direction with all the journals that we publish, and same is the case with these platinum open access journals. So one of the challenges that researchers have is to understand the difference between open access journal, which is genuine, or a predatory journal. Now, we do have our brand ambassador, Dr. Sumit Narula. He gives a very in-depth session on how you can tell the difference between a genuine open access or a predatory journal. But there are some easy identifiers that you can probably keep a lookout for, because once you have the red flag, you may want to avoid those journals. So the first one is when you're talking about predatory journals, the publisher or the institute is not very well known. Again, when I'm talking about predatory journals here, what we understand by predatory usually is journals that are, charging money, for publishing. But predatory also includes papers that may have been taken, but nothing else is getting done. They're not indexed in the places where they're said, or they had dubious background, indexing background. So they don't do anything for the researchers who are publishing. So when it comes to predatory journals, please keep that in mind. It could be an institute that's genuine, but they may be running a predatory journal without even realizing it. So what you want to avoid is publishing your paper with a publisher or institute that is running a journal that is fairly unknown, whereas an open access journal of good reputation will have a reputed publisher institute backing the journal. Second is the journal has no contact information of the publisher other than an email ID for submission. So all your websites, all the publishers will complete contact details on the website and the journal pages. So you'll have very clear indication of where the journal is coming from, who are the people associated with it, and how. Third is the editorial team details are missing or are fake. They are, when I investigate journals to bring on board with any of the publishers that I've worked with, I had a very simple way of identifying whether the journal was going to be a problematic one or not, and how rigorous the editorial, theme was. And that is to look at the editorial team details of a journal. So all you have to do is take any name from the editorial board and do a Google search for the CV or resume, and see if they've listed the journal in their CV or resume. If they're not, then you might want to check 2, 3 others' names. And if you're constantly getting this information that these people have not listed a journal, then it's best to avoid such a job, publishing in such a journal, because they're definitely not using the best practices for the editorial for running the journal, right? But when you go to a publisher website, if you go through whether it's Emerald, TNF, Wiley, Elsevier, if you go to any of these major publishers, you will see that the names of the editors is provided along with their affiliation, and you will find the details will be available on resumes and CVs. So we constantly make sure that our our editorial boards are updated, and any new names that are added are checked from our end in advance before those names are added. Similarly, when any names are removed, we again ensure that it has been communicated very clearly uh, with the editors that were involved. Fourth is, of course, the trademark of any predatory publisher, which is rapid acceptance and publication timelines. The fact is, while a lot of people associate rapid publication with open access, A genuine open access journal takes the same time as a subscription journal for the review and decisions, which is 4 to 6 months on an average. And it does not guarantee acceptance of the article. So when it comes to quality, genuine open access journals follow the same processes. Fifth is, your predatory journals will mention very high impact factor, ratings, but very unnatural. They are obtained from dubious indexing agencies like Global Impact Factor, Site Factor, and Universal Impact Factor. Whereas what we stick to is what are the journals that are listed in the Journal Citation Report and which is released annually by Clarivate Analytics. So we want to keep that in mind. And sixth is, of course, like I said, it's indexed under various and often dubious indexing agencies, whereas a genuine open access journal will be indexed with recognized agencies like Web of Science, Scopus, ISI, ESCI, ABDC, or if it's medical, it's PubMed or Medline, such. So if you want to understand, if you're looking at a journal and they have a list of, where they are indexed, and you want to check whether this is a genuine, agency, is it really relevant? What you may want to do is go to your any of your major publishers, well-established publishers, see where they are indexing similar journals. If they are not mentioning, so you will not see GIF being listed with any of the journals, whether it's with Sage, Emerald, Elsevier, PNF, Wiley. You won't see GIF and UIF being listed as indexing. So you know that you want to avoid journals that have mentioned these agencies in their list. Then finally, about making your article discoverable. So you have written a great paper, you're finally working towards publishing it. But as publishers, we can take your research really far and wide. But what you have is the biggest strength that you have is the peers, the people you know. Uh, those are the people who can or will often be the ones who are going to be reading your articles, downloading, supporting your research. So you want to make sure that you are taking advantage or making the decisions which will help your article get discovered much better. So there are few things you can do to promote your work effectively. First is before publication itself, you have to develop a good online presence and build a community. It could be by building your contact base, using social networks to expand, create a website or a blog, which has details about you, what kind of research you're interested in, some background about yourself. Use that as a link in your email signatures, for instance. So that is a very quick way of connecting and getting people curious about what you could do, and you never know where the interest to collaborate would come from. Then is to leverage your professional, corporate, and academic connections as business. Then is volunteering as a reviewer. So one of the, it seems like such a it is in a way a lot of thankless work, that a reviewer does because they're behind the scenes. They're not usually openly identified as a reviewer of certain papers. Um, but why do reviewers go through this process? So a lot of reviewers, their main motivation is they get to read research way before it is published, whether it's good, bad, and they develop a very critical eye for what is relevant in their field. So that is definitely there. Secondly is also rapport building with the editors of the journals that they review for. A very good reviewer definitely comes under the notice of an editor-in-chief. So you want to make sure that you are taking steps to, understand how you can work as a reviewer and perhaps enhance the work that you do. Then is, I think a lot of people now have ORCID IDs. If you don't, please to create an ORCID ID that will help put all your research together and to be able to showcase this better, more effectively on different platforms. Then is please register with Kudos. Now I will be sharing information about Kudos. This is a platform which will really, really support dissemination of your of your research. And it's a free platform, it's a multi-publisher platform. I'll talk about this just after this slide. Then at the time of publication, now suppose your work has been accepted and it is expected to be published soon. So you can start spreading the word effectively with the community. Let them know it is accepted. Please let them know when it's going to be likely for reading and cited. When it is published, let them know. You want to make most of your publishers' PR campaign and work with them to develop relevant and successful marketing messages. Then, if your institution has a press office, let them know, and so they can spread the word for you. And finally, contact the ones you have cited. A short note acknowledging how their research has contributed to yours definitely is something that they'll be happy to hear about, and they are also very likely to support your research and talk about it and share it forward. So it's definitely good to come in contact with the people you have cited. And finally, after publication, share information about your publication and use that as an opportunity to look for further collaborations. So collaboration is necessary for journals, especially now. And there are so many other social media websites that can help you work on that aspect. Now, this is where I need to talk about kudos, because when we talk about social media, using it effectively becomes extremely crucial. So, kudos, like I mentioned earlier, also is a multi-publisher platform, which means that you could have published with Emerald, you could have published with Tail and Francis, then Sage, and then Emerald again. It doesn't matter in which order and which publishers. You can still use the same account to promote your work on Kudos. So it becomes one place for researchers to explain, share, and measure impact related to their work. And it gives key metrics from various providers with insights on what is effective. So researchers usually find it very useful in understanding how their research is being perceived, how it is moving about, what the reach of the research is. And what we have seen is even the small efforts have led to an average of 23% increase in downloads, which makes it very, very effective. And we have, of course, thousands of authors now registered with Kudos. I've shared the link here. You please go and check it out. Like I said, there's no fees. It's a very quick registration, and you can start using it immediately. And it works on 3 very, very simple steps. So the first step is explaining your research. So when we talk about research with a supervisor, with a guide, somebody senior, or it's a very different thing from explaining to a peer, or a person who may not know anything, coming from a non-research background. So when you have to talk about your research to them, you'll talk in a very different language altogether. So in this case, when you're writing in Kudos, write the simplest explanation about what your work is about. So it brings in a personal perspective to the research that you have done. The second is sharing. Now, not everyone is very savvy with various different platforms. We know that there are challenges to word counts when it comes to Twitter. There's hashtags to be taken care of in LinkedIn. You may have, at the rates and all to be managed. And of course, creating 3, 4 posts, different kinds for, the same article, it is challenging and you may not even know how effective it is. So Kudos actually simplifies that process for you. And you can see that, it also selects you can select which are the accounts or social media accounts that you want to link with Kudos, where you want to post your update. So you have an example here which has been done using Kudos with we have Dr. Nikhilesh Dholakia, whose article has been announced in this way. So there's a quick link for people to go in, because to be honest, when you see a lot of the LinkedIn posts, you'll see a screenshot, and quite often it's not very effective. It's not very pleasant to read. Uh, and nobody is going to take the time and trouble of actually going to the publisher site, identifying the paper, and then read. So make it easier. Give a snippet of your article, but create that link which will help them, which will guide them to where that article will be available, whether it's open access or not. So make that easier for your readers. And finally, you have the measure, the matrix, understanding how your research is being, uh, is being perceived, where is it moving, where are your actual readers or where your contacts, where are your possible collaborations coming from. So what it does is it is automatically identifying the number of times the article may have been shared, how many clicks on shares there have been, how many views have been there on Kudos, what are the click-through to read the publications. I'll talk about the alphabetic score in just a second, but also Web of Science times cited. So all this information is there, and you also see that little box which says, like this person has shared a post on 16th September via Facebook, via Twitter, via LinkedIn. Whatever edits they have done, it's all mentioned here. And what you'll see against Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn is reference. So you know which are the platforms that are where your connections are very active. In this case, it's LinkedIn and Twitter. So what we've seen in Asia is a very high dependence on LinkedIn or preference for LinkedIn over Twitter, which is different in the West. In the West, you'll see Twitter being used for communicating research and in various ways, and they prefer Twitter. But so depending on where your audiences lie, you know which platforms are working for you. Now that brings me to the all metric score. So the nice colorful circle that you see, and if you're not very familiar with it, just to give you a little background to it. All metric, when it comes to research, what was considered valid research was research that is published in a journal or a book, academic book. Now that is where research was actually limited. Whereas over the times we have realized that research is communicated in various ways. What about research that may have been mentioned in a newspaper, a national newspaper? That is again very important thing for any author for research to show the impact of the research. What happens if it is mentioned on Facebook? You'll see a lot of this posts which sometimes we don't realize is actually research being communicated. Could be, a particular virus which is now spreading, and it may be a small post perhaps, but then these are all research documents. They should be recognized as well. So it could be on any of the social medias, social media platforms where they could be cited. So now to understand the real impact of research, it becomes very important to even calculate those factors into the impact of an article. So what Onmetrics does is it has assigned numbers based on the platform. So you have, say, for example, a citation in a journal. So that is 2 points. If it is being shared on Facebook, it's 0.25. If it's on Twitter, it may be 0.25. Newspaper, it is 1. So they have base, and they are going to they are collecting this to understand what the impact of the article is. So right now, we see a lot of journals. We already have this for many journals, and we are increasing this. Journals have all metric scores. Okay, so very soon we'll have article level all metric scores, which will give a clearer insight of the impact of an article rather than it relying on the journal itself. But this is something we are transitioning into. So your all metric score becomes an excellent point for those things. Sorry. Yeah, so coming towards the end of my presentation, when it comes to collaborations, and you can think beyond authorship on how to, even for writing better. What you might want to do is you might want to consider book reviewing, referring or becoming a peer reviewer, joining editorial advisory board, where usually in such cases the invitations come from the editors themselves. That's how you join the advisory board. But you may want to start looking at those aspects that will help you get there if that's a path that you want to take, becoming a contributing editor or regional editor or the editorship. These are all, again, processes that take time, where you have to have very close contact with the editors and the publishers and work with them, and that makes you a very good researcher as well over time. So with that, I come to an end of my presentation. Like I said, we'll try and take as many queries as possible, but in case we are unable to do, cover all the questions, you're welcome to write to me directly, and I'll be happy to answer. So, Disha, do we have any queries at this point in time?
Hi, Sangeeta, we do, but I do invite everybody to please post your questions if you have any. And by the time others write, I'm just going to. Lovely. Okay. So your first question is, what is more recognized? Is it a book chapter or a journal article?
I think we are maybe the perspective needs to be different here. It's not about what is better. It's really about what are you, whether how is your research better communicated. So it's sometimes a book chapter could be, a better choice in terms of publication, and in some cases it's a journal article. Both have their own advantages, and it's never a matter of comparison between the two. You have different readers for both, and so I don't think that question, would be correct on whether which one is better of the two.
Thank you. The next question is, Turnitin is common tool for plagiarism. Is there any other tool which we can use to check plagiarism?
Say there are fair number of free softwares, and there are a lot of institutes that may have Turnitin, but you need something as robust as Authenticate, which is actually the best. But it's not possible for everyone to have an access to Authenticate. So maybe the plagiarism check can be done on other softwares, and you have to let the publishers do the Authenticate check at their end. So you can try your best to minimize it by using the free software, or if your institute has access to Authenticate. Turnitin or similar software.
Thank you. The next question is that I have published one article in Performance Management and Matrices in 2019. Can I now upload full text of it on Google Scholar under my profile?
I'm not entirely sure what the guidelines on those are. If it's maybe if you can share that question with me on my email, we can check the guidelines. If it's a subscription journal, or if the publisher has any kind of uh, you know rules against publishing it or free distribution, then you may not be able to do so. See, you have your sites like Academia EDU or ResearchGate, where a lot of research is being uploaded, very freely. Even though they're ethically wrong, they are not supposed to, because those are actually covered under the copyrights and rules of the journals or the publisher. Uh, so there are people who are practicing that without understanding, or by ignoring the publisher's rules. What you want to do is, like I said, check if it is a subscription journal. There's a very good possibility you are not allowed to freely distribute those articles. So the examples I had given was in terms of institutional repository. Unfortunately, there's so many journals out there. I will not remember them just by mention of a name. But if you can connect with me on email, I'll can have a look. Next question, Disha.
Yes. So the next question is very interesting. They're saying that if there are predatory journals, why is it that the concerned authorities, why don't they take action and eliminate it completely?
Because they're very, very clever. I don't know how else to put it.
No,
Because
it's almost like if there is somewhere someone is stealing something, why can't the authorities stop them?
Yeah, I mean that's what the challenge is, tracking these predatory publishers. None of these publishers. See, there are we within Emerald have faced this ourselves, and I've faced this with a
Yeah.
lot of other publishing companies. Where they are so clever in the way they go about it, you cannot track them. So the onus of making sure that you're publishing with an authentic publisher lies on the researchers themselves. The email IDs may be Gmail. There's no proper office address. How do the authorities and who exactly goes and chases them? That becomes a big challenge. So, and with every publisher, we are constantly trying to make the systems and the processes stronger. We try and educate a lot of researchers regarding how to avoid predatory publishers. And unfortunately, it is never going to be enough because the predatory publishers are also getting cleverer and cleverer. For instance, one thing you'll notice with a lot of predatory publishers is they might use a Gmail ID, you know, and so now that the researchers are aware that Gmail IDs usually mean a predatory publisher, they might avoid it, right? But we have also had a case maybe a couple of years back when one of our editors received an email from an author saying that I have paid for the article after submission, and you still haven't published or published my article. And this actually put a huge question mark. This really worried the editor because the journal does not charge article processing charges. So he got worried. He said, "How did this happen?" He looked at the email. He says, "It says Emerald Publishing. Everything seems correctly, but there's absolutely no way that he has or anyone in his team has sent out this email." And that's when he caught it. They had misspelled or they had spelled Emerald differently. So, instead of Emerald, which is the correct spelling, they had written Emarald. So, Emerald Publishing. And what happened is the predatory publisher managed to get the money from the author, and unfortunately, there's nothing we could do about it. So, predatory publishers are also becoming clever. Now, this is where I said that I really like Platinum Open Access because Platinum Open Access means authors do not have to pay. It is supported by institutions. When authors are not paying for publication, for open access publication, how will the predatory publishers target them? They can't. So, which is why I think we should really support Platinum Open Access going forward. And there'll be more systems that will come into place, as we go forward. Uh, Open access world is still evolving. There's a need for a lot of things, but we can't go too fast either. So until then, I think the only thing we can do is, as researchers, be cautious about where you're submitting your paper. I'm sure it's not the answer you're looking for, but hopefully it helps understand some of the challenges we face at our end. Next question, Disha.
Well, I'm not sure how to answer this. They're saying that I'm a zoology person. Are there any zoology related journals? I did
I
make a
think
simple search on our Emerald website, and it does say that we've submitted we do have about 1,000 articles on our website, but I'm not sure if we have something really dedicated to zoology. Maybe you can go
no,
on
we
our
don't.
websites. Yeah, we don't. So maybe you could go and search for other publishers. But Sangeeta, please.
We don't have a specific journal for zoology, but there are a lot of interdisciplinary journals that we have, and zoology could be one of the topics that is being covered. So, but the best way to search for is through the publisher's website. I wish you luck with that.
Yes. One more question is, please provide us a couple of Emerald publication journals under Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and please share the link where we can get these. It will be of great help. For people who are looking for this information, number one, I want to say that out of the 310 journals that we have, under our bucket, 298 of them are already indexed in Scopus. Well, as far as the quarters are concerned, 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't have the exact information on that, but maybe we might get that information soon. But we do have 298 journals out of the 310 already indexed in Scopus.
Thank you, Disha. I don't think I have anything to add to that. It's quite a task because this again the quarters they keep changing, right?
Yeah,
So
stay tuned.
uh, yeah, so maybe you can go for the next question in the meanwhile.
Well, actually, those are all the questions that we have today so
Okay,
far.
perfect.
Okay, so someone just sent a question saying what is H index and I-10 index?
Hmm. Again, I have uh, I haven't worked with these indexes in a very long time myself, so maybe my understanding of my uh, you know uh, knowledge about these indexes will be a little limited. But again, they're basically checking uh, the checking the citations of the publication based on different years. I can come back to you with a little more details if you can just drop me a message, let me know. And
I
but
do have
perhaps
the formula. I do have the
yeah, the
formula of
formula is there.
I-10 index. It just says that it's the number of publications with at least 10 citations. So if your paper has at
Hmm.
least 10 citations, it will come in the I-10 index. So it's just a method of, or even,
Yeah, again, like H index is, I think, what calculation of citation in the past, was it 3 years or 5 years? I'm a little, unclear on that. Again, this is not something that I work on personally, so pardon me for being rusty on this. But you'll find that information on Google, and maybe I can find it a simpler way of explaining if you can identify yourself to me or
let's just see if we have any more questions. Okay, I don't know if you, AD scientific index. What is AD scientific index? If we know by any chance.
I'm sorry, I don't know about this index. What is it? AB.
AD, A for Apple, D for Delhi. AD scientific index.
So your indexing agencies are just, agencies that are indexing basis of certain criteria they might have set on what will be included in their list. For example, Scopus. Scopus will have their own set of ideas on, they have their own set of criteria, sorry, in terms of what they will consider is a authentic and genuine publication. So why we use Scopus is basically because the algorithm is very, very strong. Similarly, you have your different indexing agencies which will identify or create a list of journals or articles which are most relevant to say whether it's science or PubMed will have medical journals. So indexing agencies are just basically creating database or list based on what subjects they may be supporting. So I'm guessing it will be one of those agencies, but I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it.
For scientific research.
Yes.
We come to an end to our session. All of our questions have been answered. Thank you so much, Sangeeta. I now invite Ms. Ratnasuri to please do the vote of thanks. We can't hear you, ma'am.
Am I audible enough now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you very much, Disha. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the distinguished guests and the respected audience. So it's my privilege to have been proposed vote of thanks on behalf of the Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, in collaboration with Emerald Publishing for the successful completion of the 5th session of the Faculty Development Program 2023. First and foremost, I extended a very hearty vote of thanks to the main speaker of today's session, Ms. Sangeeta Menon, Regional Publishing Manager at Emerald Publishing. Dear Madam, it was truly an inspiring and enlightening session. At the outset, I would like to express my profound gratitude to Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, headed by Professor Atula Nyanapala, Dean, Faculty of Management Studies. Further, I would like to express my special gratitude to Professor M.S.M. Aslam, Chairman, Research and Publication Unit of the Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, for his unconditional support in implementing this program. I would also like to express our sense of obligation to Professor Jayantha N. Devasiri, Chairperson for the FDP, whose visionary approach and dedication played a vital role in initiating this program. A special word of thanks goes to Ms. Disha Lakkanpal, Chief Organizer of the FDP, Emerald Publishing, for the collaboration in making this remarkable event. My deepest gratitude goes to the organizing committee, particularly to Ms. Kaushalyani Ruwandika, Coordinating Secretary of the FDP, and Ms. Dibuthu Vijayaratna, Assistant Secretary of the FDP, who meticulously planned and executed every aspect of this FDP 2023 program. Finally, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the respected audience, including all the academics, researchers, industry participants, research scholars, and our exclusive media partner, Lake House Publishers, owned by Associated Newspaper of Ceylon Limited, for their active participation here. Hope you all will join the FDP session 6 on academic integrity and ethics in publication by Dr. Rasika Priyankara, Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. So, hope to see you all again with 6th session. And once again, thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Ms. Ratnasuri. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Have a lovely day.